Theresa May has said further measures have been drawn up to reassure MPs about her Brexit deal, but she warned that defeat in Parliament would leave the country in uncharted territory. More than 200 MPs from across the Commons have written to Mrs May, urging her to rule out a no-deal Brexit. Ministers have said the new 10-year plan for the NHS in England will focus on prevention as much as treatment, but Labour says more money and staff will be needed. A man has been charged with the murder of a passenger who was stabbed on a train in Surrey. Leicester and Fulham have been knocked out of the FA Cup by teams from League Two. Theresa May has warned that the UK faces uncharted territory if MPs reject the deal she has agreed for Britain's withdrawal from the European Union. The Prime Minister said the government was still working to win assurances from the EU that might persuade MPs to back the agreement. Speaking as MPs return to Westminster for what will be a critical session, the Prime Minister insisted a vote on the deal would definitely go ahead. But the Democratic Unionist Party, which supports the government on key votes in the Commons, said the toxic problems with the agreement were still there. Here's our political correspondent, Nick Eardley.
It may be a new year in Westminster, but the debates around Brexit feel very familiar. Theresa May continues to stick to her plan, saying it delivers on the referendum result and protects the economy. But she also knows many MPs disagree, and she told Andrew Marshall she wanted to offer them reassurances.
What we'll be setting out over the next few days is measures in three areas. The first is measures that will be specific for Northern Ireland. The second is a greater role for Parliament as we take these negotiations into the next stage for our future relationship. And the third, and we're still working on this, is further assurances from the European Union to address the issues that have been raised.
The problem for Mrs May is that assurances so far have not been enough. Many Conservative MPs still intend to vote against her plan. The Democratic Unionists, the party which keeps the Conservatives in power, said today that fundamental problems with the deal remained. As things stand, a government defeat still appears likely in around 10 days' time. Mrs May warned of uncharted territory if that happens. She refused to rule out bringing her plan back to Parliament if it is rejected the first time. But she also refused to be drawn on potential fallback options. That creates uncertainty for different sides opposed to the PM's plan. Could those wanting another referendum end up with the UK leaving without any trade deal? Or could those wanting no deal end up with no Brexit at all? Labour, meanwhile, continues to wrestle with what it does if the Prime Minister's plan is rejected. A new poll carried out for the People's Vote campaign suggests Labour will be hit at the ballot box if it supports any Brexit deal negotiated by the Conservatives. The YouGov poll also suggests 75% of Labour supporters want a final say on Brexit. The party's Shadow Foreign Secretary, Emily Thornberry, set out existing Labour strategy.
We would prefer a general election above everything else because we think that that's the old-fashioned way and actually the right way of doing this when you have a government that can't govern. But then we leave all options on the table and that will include a popular vote. The most likely option, I think, is that there'll be a general election.
As MPs return to Westminster tomorrow, the Brexit clock continues to tick. Mrs May will host Tory MPs for a reception where she will hope to change some minds. There is still a lot to be resolved in the coming weeks.
One of the Conservative backbenchers the Prime Minister will be meeting is the former Minister, Dame Caroline Spelman. She says more than 200 MPs have signed a letter calling on Theresa May to rule out a no-deal Brexit. Speaking on the week in Westminster here on Radio 4, Caroline Spelman said the initiative was supported by MPs across the political spectrum.
This no-to-no-deal letter provides something of a foundation, really. Amongst the signatories, you've got a big range from people who are Brexiteers through to people who are Remainers. But we are united on one thing, which we want to protect jobs and livelihoods by making sure we don't just crash out without a deal.
A long-term plan for the health service is being launched by NHS England. Theresa May, who's promised an extra £20.5 billion a year by 2023, has described it as an historic step for the health service. Ministers say special emphasis will be put on prevention as well as cure. But Labour politicians have accused the Conservatives of running down the NHS for years, starving it of cash and of privatising elements. Our health editor Hugh Pym reports.
Tomorrow will see the publication of the long-awaited plan which the NHS in England was asked to come up with in return for the government's 5-year funding commitment made last summer. Today, government ministers flagged up some key elements of the plan, including improved maternity care, better disease detection, for example with cancer, and new digital technology helping patients in areas like GP appointments. The Health and Social Care Secretary Matt Hancock said the main focus was on ensuring more people could be looked after away from hospitals.
We need to put extra money in, but we want to spend that money as much as possible on preventing people from getting ill in the first place, helping them to stay healthier. So the biggest increase, the biggest part of that funds is going to go $4.5 billion to primary care, to GPs and to community services, all about trying to make sure that the hospitals can be there for the people who really need them.
The new funding of 3.4% extra a year in real terms is for the NHS in England. Under the usual formula, that will generate more funding for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. But Labour's John Ashworth argues that in England it's less straightforward.
You've really got to examine the small print on this, because when you take into account the wider cuts to public health budgets, when you take into account the wider cuts to training budgets, £1 billion worth of cuts in health services this year. So it's actually about an increase of 2.7% under the Tories. And then the public health cuts which are coming, they're going to decimate community public health services.
Labour also claims that there's not enough emphasis on the recruitment of new health staff. Tomorrow's plan is for the NHS. The government's policy document on social care in England, known as a Green Paper, has not yet been published, though ministers say it's due in weeks. Many have argued that it's hard to judge the health strategy without the plans for social care.
A man from Surrey has been charged with the murder of a passenger who was stabbed to death on a train between Guildford and London Waterloo. Lee Pomeroy was travelling with his 14-year-old son. A woman has also been charged by the police. Sarah Campbell reports.
Mr Pomeroy and his son were heading into London on Friday afternoon. Around 1 o'clock, they boarded a train in Guildford, and shortly afterwards, according to police, the 51-year-old was fatally stabbed. Early on Saturday morning, some 17 hours after Mr Pomeroy died, Darren Shane Pencil, who's 35, was arrested at a flat in Farnham in Surrey. He's now been charged with murder and possession of an offensive weapon. A woman, Chelsea Mitchell, who's 27, has been charged with assisting an offender. Both were remanded in custody and will appear before magistrates later today. Mr Pomeroy was killed the day before his 52nd birthday in what his family have described as a pointless and horrific attack.
President Trump has said there will not be a complete withdrawal of US troops from Syria, despite announcing it on Twitter last month. In his latest tweet on the issue, he said there would be a US military presence in the country until Islamic State militants there had been defeated. His National Security Advisor John Bolton has also set new conditions, saying that Turkey must first agree to protect US-backed Kurdish fighters. Malaysia's King Sultan Muhammad V has surprised the country by announcing his immediate abdication. No official reason has been given. He has only just returned to royal duties after 2 months on medical leave, a period that's led to renewed speculation about his private life. In Malaysia, monarchs are chosen from 9 royal families and serve for 5 years. This is the first time one has abdicated since the country gained independence from Britain in 1957. Here's our Southeast Asia correspondent, Jonathan Head.
Malaysia's sultans are accorded an officially revered status which inhibits any open criticism of their sometimes lavish lifestyles. However, rumours and online comment about the habits of King Muhammad V have proliferated since he took up his turn as the country's constitutional monarch 2 years ago. These culminated in reports that he'd married a 25-year-old Russian model in November while on a break from his official duties, a marriage the palace has neither confirmed nor denied. An extraordinary meeting of the Royal Council of Rulers took place earlier this week, at which the King's situation is believed to have been discussed. The King plays a largely ceremonial role in Malaysia, but has the power to confirm the appointment of a Prime Minister and to dissolve Parliament. The current Prime Minister, Mahathir Mohamad, who returned to office in a shock election victory last May, had a tense relationship with the Sultans during his previous governments when he attempted to limit their authority. Last week he warned that all Malaysians must be bound by the law, whatever their status.
Police in the United States have revealed that Wayne Rooney was arrested in December for being drunk in public. The former England and Manchester United star was fined. His spokesman said Rooney had been disorientated after taking sleeping pills with alcohol on a flight. Here's our Washington correspondent, David Willis.
Court records obtained by local media show that Wayne Rooney was taken into custody at Washington's Dulles Airport in Virginia on his return from Saudi Arabia. He was charged with being drunk and swearing in public and later paid a small fine. Rooney is in America playing for DC United and in half a season succeeded in taking the team from the bottom of what's known here as the Major League all the way to the playoffs. He was banned from driving for 2 years in the UK following a night out in which he was caught driving a woman's car whilst nearly 3 times over the limit.
Sport, and the third round of the FA Cup has produced more upsets, with 2 Premier League sides being knocked out and a non-league team going into the draw. With the details, here's Hugh Woozencroft.
Newport County provided the shock of the FA Cup third round as they beat Leicester City 2-1 thanks to a late penalty winner from Padraig Amond. His manager Michael Flynn was elated with the victory.
It's the first time I've ever beaten a Premiership team as a manager. Leicester are a fantastic football club. They've got a great manager in Claude. They're littered with excellent players, and for us to go and beat Leicester tonight, I'll never forget that.
Non-league side Barnet of the National League are into round 4 after they beat a side 84 places above them in the football pyramid. They came past Championship side Sheffield United 1-0. Here's the disappointed United boss Chris Wilder.
I thought our supporters got it, didn't get it spot on because they should have booed our players more, 100%. But got it right when the boy came off. Cool Tursto I thought was outstanding for Barnet and everyone their players, and they deserve that.
Elsewhere, League Two's Oldham Athletic produced a stunning comeback to shock top-flight Fulham 2-1 at Craven Cottage. League One side Doncaster beat Preston North End 3-1. Queen's Park Rangers and Millwall of the Championship also went through, joined by Manchester City and Watford of the Premier League. Arsenal are now top of the Women's Super League after their 4-2 win at West Ham. Manchester City drew 1-1 at Bristol City. Scottish Premiership side Rangers have signed their former captain Stephen Davis on a 6-month loan from Southampton after announcing Jermaine Defoe has also joined them on an 18-month deal. In Rugby Union's Premiership, Wasps ended a run of 5 straight League and Cup defeats with a 27-16 win over Northampton Saints. The England and Wasps lock Joe Launchbury said they owed it to their fans to get a home win.
We fully understand that we probably let the fans down in the last few weeks. We got fantastic away support at Twickenham last weekend, and obviously 2 weeks ago here for the Christmas game. Again, another show of fantastic support from our supporters. So yes, we do feel like we owed them with a win. But today, I would have taken a real scrappy game and just to get the win.
And in the Pro 14, the Cheetahs beat Zebra.
Hugh Woozencroft. Now for a first look at the morning papers. The new NHS spending proposals make many of the front pages. The Daily Telegraph says the 10-year plan will see every child with cancer offered genetic testing so they can receive more effective personalised treatment. It says the government hopes the overall plan will save 500,000 lives, a figure that's splashed on the front pages of the Daily Express and the Daily Mail. The Mail features an interview with the Chancellor, Philip Hammond, in which he says the NHS must improve efficiency to ensure the new cash isn't wasted. The Times claims to have seen an analysis which shows that even with the new money, the Health Service has a £1 billion budget black hole for the coming year. The Guardian says Theresa May is to make what it calls a desperate plea to EU leaders to save her Brexit deal by providing more concessions on the Irish backstop. Boris Johnson features in the Times supporting a no-deal Brexit, saying it's closest to what people voted for. And the front pages of The Sun, The Mirror and The Daily Star feature the photograph of Wayne Rooney taken by police in the US following his arrest for being drunk in public. One of the founder members of the Hollies, Eric Haydock, has died at the age of 75. He was in the group from 1962 until 1966 and was one of the first British musicians to use a 6-string Fender bass guitar. His former bandmate Bobby Elliott said Eric Haydock helped to provide the platform for the famous 3-way Hollies harmony that featured on hits such as I'm Alive, Bus Stop and Just One Look.
Just one look, that's all it took, yeah, just one look, that's all it took, yeah, just one look, and I felt so
The headlines again. Theresa May has promised MPs they will definitely get a vote on her Brexit deal and has warned that rejecting it will push the UK into uncharted territory. More than 200 MPs from across the parties have written to Mrs May urging her to rule out a no-deal Brexit. Ministers have said a new 10-year plan for the NHS in England will focus on prevention as much as treatment, but Labour say more money and staff will be needed. A man and woman have been charged in connection with the killing of a train passenger in Surrey. BBC News.
Read by Chris Aldridge. In a moment here on Radio 4, Laurie Taylor and his guests will consider the value of work. Then at 1:45, we'll spend some time listening to the bells of Manchester Town Hall, which, according to the notes I've got here, are considered by some to be the finest set of English-hung bells anywhere in the world. That's quite a claim. We'll find out in half an hour. Now, though, the weather. Here's Darren Bett.
Thanks very much indeed, Charles. It's been a very quiet weekend of weather. On Sunday, we had temperatures getting up to 12 degrees, actually, in Northumberland. And the sunniest weather, it was difficult to find in most places, was at Kirkwall in Orkney, 3.8 hours of sunshine. The weather on Monday in northern Scotland, though, is going to look very different with severe gales here. The big change is coming because we've got a deep area of low pressure sweeping in from the Atlantic right now. It's running just to the north of Scotland and it's beginning to pick up the winds now across many northern areas. The winds will continue to strengthen overnight, the drizzle being replaced by some more persistent rain coming in from the northwest as well. And pretty mild for most of us through the rest of tonight, but the clouds are a bit thinner through the Midlands and southern England, so it'll be a chillier start to Monday here. And across southern England, Wales, the Midlands and eastern England, there may be some fleeting sunshine, but on the whole I think it will be cloudy. Dry for most places. There could be some rain coming into North Wales. There'll be a freshening southwesterly wind as well. And for northern England, the day will be mostly cloudy. We'll see some rain and drizzle, mainly for northwest England, not much crossing the Pennines really. The cloud probably breaking towards the end of the day, accompanied by some strong winds as well. And Monday's going to be a windy day for Northern Ireland too. Cloud and outbreaks of rain in the morning, pushing southwards, allowing sunshine to follow in from the north during the afternoon. The worst of the weather is going to be across Scotland. I think we'll see wet weather pushing back into the north and northwest of Scotland. Sunny spells developing elsewhere after some early rain, which could be on the heavy side. But we're looking at widespread gales, west and northwesterly winds, gusts of 70 miles an hour or more across northern parts of Scotland may lead to some travel disruption. So a much windier day for all of us, really, I think, on Monday. A mild one, though. Temperatures 11 or 12 degrees. By the time we get to Tuesday, the deep low is out of the way. It won't be as windy, but we've got a northerly wind. It will be colder, but there'll be some welcome sunshine on the way. Just a few showers towards the east coast.